Patino said he was in the waiting room.
All right, we are now live, so attendees trickling in. I will be able to promote any board members that are there. Member Patino, I will promote you to panelist as well.
Very good. And then Inder, did you see my note about public comment? I just texted you.
Inder, I do not believe is actually going to be able to join today.
Oh, she's right there.
Oh, she is? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Great. Inder is here. Sorry about that. I didn't see you on the attendee list.
Yeah, her double. It's her.
Because this is a special meeting, Chair, we don't have to have open public time comment on items not on the agenda. And so I had mentioned that to Nick and he opted to exclude it. At this point, I don't see any legal issues with allowing the public to comment if you choose.
Okay,
but it's not required.
We're not required to have an open public comment. But we only have one item and I will give folks time to comment on the item.
Exactly. Each item on the agenda, which we have one, will have an opportunity for public comment. We just don't have the open time opportunity to comment on items not on the agenda because it's a special meeting.
Very good. And let me just see how many folks we've got in the room now. 2, 3. It looks like we've got 8 board members. I believe that constitutes a quorum.
Can I interrupt? Councilmember Hanlon
is in the. Sorry, it looks like we were saying the same thing.
Yes. So Vanessa, if you see Councilmember Hannon.
I've just promoted Councilmember Hannon to a panelist.
Very good. We'll give him a moment to get his audio connected and then we'll go ahead and get the show rolling. And Vanessa, just stand by ready to call roll, please.
All right.
Welcome, Member Hannon.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. For some reason, I was having a challenge logging in.
No problem. We can hear you and see you.
Great.
Great. So the time I have, thank you, by the way, everyone, for attending this special Board of Directors meeting. Today's Friday, December 3rd, 2021. It is 1:05. That's a weird way to say it. 1:05 p.m. As normal people say it. And I'm calling this meeting to order. And I will turn it over to our clerk of the day, Vanessa, to please call the roll.
Right. Alameda County. Albany.
Here.
Berkeley.
Here.
Dublin. Emeryville.
Here.
Fremont. Hayward. Livermore.
Here.
Newark.
Here.
Oakland.
Present.
Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Here.
San Leandro.
Here.
Tracy. Union City.
Here.
And Community Advisory Committee, I'm sure is here, but we do have a quorum of board members.
Very good. Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, we have but one item before us today. This is a resolution supporting a sustainable rooftop solar market in California. I'm hoping you all have had a chance to review the resolution. It's quite short and it's a little bit general, but also to the point at the same time. At this stage, I would like to ask Director Kalb if he has any comments on the resolution, but not before I thank him for reviewing multitudinous materials to put together a resolution that would speak on behalf of East Bay Community Energy. So Director Kalb, do you have anything to say before we ask for clarifying questions?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I first just want to acknowledge that that the City of Berkeley City Council already adopted a resolution similar to this, and I used portions of theirs in this one. So I want to acknowledge that and thank Councilmember Harrison and City of Berkeley for doing that, as well as some of our statewide solar organizations that have been engaged in this issue for quite a long time. For those of you who don't know, probably most of you all know this already, the California Public Utilities Commission is engaged in a proceeding, as they do, and this one is on net energy metering. This is their what's called the 3.0 net energy metering or net metering 3.0 to look at how the program is designed in terms of the fees, the costs, who benefits, what the impacts are, and they're engaging in the proceeding, and many parties have submitted briefs and comments over the past several months, and they expect a proposed or draft decision to come out later this month, and possibly a final decision to come out or to be discussed and possibly voted on early in the next calendar year. Net energy metering is what has is one of the things that has incentivized property owners, including homeowners, to put solar panels on their roof. And it has allowed those property owners to effectively get credit or, in effect, sell back any excess energy that they're creating with their solar panels back onto the grid. And that helps reduce the cost to the property owner and therefore increase the interest and essentially the incentive for putting more solar panels on the roof. And of course, we all want to see clean energy in as many forms as possible to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and have a clean environment. And I think we all know the reasons that we want to see more solar and other forms of clean energy throughout our state, throughout the world. So there's a lot of controversy. Some of the parties, including but not limited to the investor-owned utilities, are asking for let's say a substantial fee to be assessed to these behind the meter or customer-sided solar customers that would compensate for some of the apparent costs to those who are non-solar customers in terms of the transmission grid. And I'm sure there are things that I'm saying that leave things out. So obviously Nick is here to fill in any gaps that I leave out. There was a bill, I think you all remember the controversial bill that the legislature tried to put forward earlier this year that was defeated in the first house. So that was a good thing. That would have settled this to some extent in a way that is detrimental to the solar industry. And our goal here, in my opinion, is to not to pretend there isn't some adjustments that need to be made over time. There certainly are, but to make sure it's done in a way that keeps the solar industry alive and thriving and still maintains some incentive for customers, particularly lower income customers who need that incentive to be part of the clean energy solution. So this is a resolution, lots of whereas clauses. You see the resolve clauses that gets into some specifics. And then if we pass this, Nick will send this along to all the commissioners and to Governor Newsom. And hopefully we will, once we send a resolution in, they'll do whatever we want, of course. I'm sure that'll happen. And hopefully they'll take our comments into serious consideration along with others in the public interest, environmental and clean energy space. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. I know Nick is obviously very knowledgeable, as other EBC staff are on this, and I hope we pass this today.
Great. Thank you, Director Kalb, so much for all of your work on this. I will turn back to our clerk at this time to see if any speaker cards or electronic comments have been submitted. And then we will get to folks who are raising their hands amongst the attendees. A reminder, if you're joining us via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to be recognized. Or if you're calling in, press *9 and that will raise your hand in Zoom. So first, Vanessa, has anyone submitted electronic comment or speaker card?
I am working to see if there are electronic cards submitted, which I can do, but there are 4 hands raised. If you'd like to take comment, let me know how much time I can set up the appropriate timer.
Let's take anyone who has submitted ahead of time first, and we will allow 2 minutes per commenter.
Okay, I am working to find that. Give me just 1 second.
No problem. You're doing great.
For this meeting. Okay, I do see for the 3rd, we have Stephen Collier. And I'm sorry, remind me, Chair, 2 minutes, is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay.
2 minutes. So Stephen Collier, I see you in the attendees. If you could please raise your hand and you can be promoted to give your public comment. Make sure you unmute yourself when Vanessa says so.
I am setting everything up, so bear with me one more.
No problem. You're doing great.
I will share a screen. We've got a very fun multicolored timer for us today. And Stephen, I will be allowing you to talk and then you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually submitted a written comment, but it was a very simple question, which is whether EBCE has conducted an equity analysis of net energy metering 2.0 that essentially examines the additional cost to non-solar rooftop solar customers that the existing rates of net energy metering create, and also takes into account the income level of people who have rooftop solar versus those who don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to hold that question and allow all of the other public speakers to go before we get that answered. But thank you for your question. Vanessa, you can go ahead, and if there are no other electronic submittals, you can go ahead and unmute folks in order and just let them know.
Okay, yeah. The only other submitted was a written comment, and I'm not seeing Nick Peterson in the attendees. So why don't we go?
Well, I'm sorry, Vanessa, if you're not seeing Nick in the attendees, you can read his comments into the record aloud and just stop at 2 minutes if they go over.
Okay, then let me do that. Reading Nick Peterson's comments for the record. They wrote, California's old existing centralized system of large isolated power generation sources and long distance transmission lines is killing us and is contrary to what we need to do to adapt to climate change. Its biggest proponents are not the people of California, but the monopolies that derive profit from its continued operation. Profit-motivated entities, even regulated ones, rarely put consumer benefits above profits, and especially do not do this for environmental concerns. This is why California is burning, and we only have a few years left to implement actions that can effectively address climate change. Revising the existing net energy metering rules is in a manner that disincentivizes customers from installing rooftop solar systems, the state's most quickly implemented form of evenly distributed, resilient renewable power, would be a huge mistake. Justifying this on the basis of a solar versus non-solar ratepayer cost shift is divisive, cynical, simplistic, and ultimately wrong in the context of global climate change, where California is a world leader in environmental protection. The IOU's NEM 3 proposal is grounded in the belief that the current monopolistic centralized system of power generation and distribution is fair, appropriate, and beneficial to all Californians. It is not. It is unreliable and dangerous. The IOUs would like us to not view the entire system from which they greatly profit, but instead focus on the income levels of current solar system owners, to have us believe that only the wealthy benefit from solar, while proposing NEM 3 changes that will ensure that only the wealthy and the IOUs will be able to install solar systems. They are proposing this at a time when costs have finally dropped to where, under current NEM 2 rules, low income and middle class homeowners can now afford to install rooftop solar system. I fully support the proposed resolution that EBCE supports protecting and expanding rooftop solar via a strong succeeding NEM tariff and expanding clean energy access by making it easier, not costlier, for people to adopt rooftop solar, and related energy storage in order to meet California's important clean energy targets and deploy solar in all communities and households, particularly those most struggling to pay their electricity bills. Please pass this resolution ASAP to lend EBCE's voice to those requesting the CPUC to not cave to the IOU's disastrous proposal for NEM 3 rules. Thank you, Nick Peterson, Albany citizen, EBC customer on NEM 2 and founding member of Albany Climate Action Coalition.
Great, Vanessa, you can move on to the speakers with their hands raised. And Mr. Collier, if you can lower your hand, please.
Thank you. I will turn to Scott Murtashaw. I will allow you to speak and start the timer once you can do so. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. My name is Scott Murtashaw, and I'm currently the policy director for the Independent Energy Producers Association, or IEP. That's a trade group that represents developers and operators of large-scale renewable energy storage and gas-fired facilities. But today I'm speaking to you only as an EBCE customer. Prior to working for IEP, I worked for 3 years as a policy advisor to the California Solar and Storage Association, which represents rooftop solar and storage. And I spent 11 years at the CPUC, where, among other duties, I oversaw the commission's net energy metering and distributed generation policies as an advisor to the president. I wrote the CPUC decision that doubled the cap on NEM 1 installations, and I was closely involved in drafting the NEM 2 decision. I felt at the time that the NEM 2 decision did not go nearly far enough in reforming NEM, and my position has not changed regardless of the identity of my subsequent employers. I'm speaking today to urge you to either reject or modify the proposed resolution. The current version of NEM 2, is overly generous to solar adopters and shifts enormous cost to non-solar customers. This cost shift is incontrovertible when solar customers pay less to support the cost of maintaining the utilities poles and wires and the public purpose programs such as CARE. Those costs must be recovered from other customers, including low-income customers. The Public Advocate's Office has estimated that we currently transfer $3.4 billion per year from non-solar customers to solar customers for the output of their systems that is in excess of the value those systems provide. And this is $2 billion more per year than we spend on helping low-income customers through CARE. Moreover, a cost-effectiveness study released by the CPUC in June shows that for every dollar customers in PG&E's territory spend on their solar systems, they receive $3.28 in net present value benefits. That's a 228% return on their investments. In stark contrast, non-solar customers receive 11 cents of value for every dollar they transfer to NEM 2 customers.
That's your time. That's your time, Mr. Murtashaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I will take the hands in the order that I'm seeing them on the panelists. So next we have Audrey Ichinose. Audrey, I will allow you to speak and restart the timer.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Audrey Ichinose. I am a member of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance and the California Alliance for Community Energy. The timing of this meeting is especially important because this is a chance to make our voice heard before a commission that has been accused of being biased in favor of the IOUs. So that decision is expected shortly. And I want to alert people to the fact that next week, Wednesday, the Save the California Solar Campaign will be delivering over 100,000 public comments in favor of maintaining a strong rooftop solar industry, and to Sacramento, as well as sign-ons by more than over 600 coalition partners. This is a wonderful resolution, in my opinion. It makes absolutely clear that strong rooftop solar accords with almost all aspects of EBCE's mission: local economic development, local control, less subject to outside market forces, clean, affordable, and most of all, the inclusion of more and more low-income households and communities of color in this vital, even historic development of clean energy in California. This is not the moment to rein in the growth of distributed energy. In fact, it's the opposite. It's the time to strengthen it by making it accessible to more and more households. So I urge the board to please pass this resolution. It really will add EBCE's voice to a very, very strong.
That's your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have JD Northrop. I will allow you to speak and restart the timer.
Hi there, my name is James Northrop. I am a resident in Berkeley and I'm an organizer with Extinction Rebellion, San Francisco Bay Area. I just wanted to call in and express support. I strongly support EBC's NEM 3.0 proposal. I think distributed solar is the future. It has benefits that are difficult to quantify in traditional cost benefit analysis, including community resilience in the face of power shutoffs and wildfires and things like that. I think that the current place that we're at right now, where we have a lot of dependency on statewide transmission and even interstate transmission, it seems like we're sort of evolving towards a much more resilient community-based solar system. But if we don't allow homeowners and other community members to affordably put solar up, I don't think we'll ever get to that sort of distributed future. So anyways, not an expert or anything, just a resident that wanted to express support, and thank you all for what you do. That's it.
Next, we have Igor Tregov. Igor, I will allow you to speak and restart the timer.
Thank you so much, Chair Martinez and board members. I'm Igor Tregov, an EBCE customer and a senior policy advisor at the California Solar and Storage Association. And on behalf of not just the 700 plus, mostly small, many of them local, several of them women-owned, BIPOC-owned, or veteran businesses in the behind-the-meter rooftop and local solar industry that we represent, but also on behalf of the almost 600 organizations, elected officials, and community leaders that have signed on in opposition to any fixed charges being as proposed by PG&E and other utilities. I would like to warmly and heartfeltly thank you for this resolution, and I urge you to pass it in its current form. I particularly would like to thank Councilmember Kalb. I have spent an extensive amount of time on the phone with him. He had some very incisive and insightful questions, as he always does. And the resolution as proposed reflects the full scope of the nuances right now. I wanted to address the question posed by the gentleman whose comment was provided earlier around a cost shift. And our internal analysis shows that at this point and over the last several years, the percentage of adoption among homeowners with a median income of $50,000 AMI or below is actually higher than that of 250,000 plus household income. I'm on my way to ribbon cutting for.
Igor, that's your time. I'm going to allow you a few more moments just because you are answering the question of another commenter. I will grant you just wrap up your thoughts, please.
Oh, yes. I am on my way to actually yet another ribbon cutting in Sassoon. It's a solar on multifamily affordable housing project, and it would be severely impacted, as would tens of thousands of other lower income customers if this imposition was done by the CPUC. So thank you to EBCE for this resolution to fight against that happening.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
All right, the last hand I see is Vaughn. Vaughn, I will allow you to speak and restart the timer.
I'm assuming you can hear me. One aspect of this is both sides actually kind of have a point, unless the numbers that Igor is providing are more accurate than what the CPUC studies have done. But there's another aspect to this whole thing is the rooftop solar is one step. Long duration storage, either for a community or microgrid or even for the home, is something that's coming in the future. We don't conceive of it when we started putting solar on a roof, but even Duracell and those kind of people are coming up with batteries for residential. And there's a scientist at the University of California, San Diego, that is expecting to have solid state lithium batteries that would last for 24 hours as a residential thing. That's where we should be going in the future. This push by the IOUs is to head that off. And in fact, I was on a webinar with Electrical Power Research Institute scientists the other day, and I brought up the point of residential long duration storage, and they specifically said, yeah, that's why we have to head off the long duration storage issue and have the utilities get a hold of it before everybody has their own. And that may sound silly now, but that's where the future is going. And this attempt by the IOUs to block the future so they can maintain their own income is nothing different than what the oil companies are now. Most of the oil companies would be out of business if it wasn't for the subsidies provided, and they should be. But they're doing whatever they can to stick around and injure the environment at the same time they're making their profit. We need to move to the future, come to a settlement on what the cost really should be. I'm willing to pay it if that's necessary, but I don't trust the organizations currently. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vanessa, when you are able to, please stop screen sharing the timer so we can see everyone's faces. And you can demote our speaker back to the attendees as well. Colleagues, we will get to your clarifying questions in just a moment. I wanted to pose to staff the question posed by the first speaker. I believe that was Stephen Collier. He was asking whether EBCE has done an analysis that was inclusive of net energy metering, and for those who have solar and who don't. And is anyone from staff able?
Yes, I'm happy to speak to that, Diane. So EBC has not conducted its own cost benefit analysis for net energy metering 2.0 or 3.0. We have largely relied on the analysis of groups like Earth Justice and Sierra Club, who have done extensive analysis, and whose proposal in the net metering 3.0 docket we have informally been very supportive of.
Very good. Thank you, Nick. Colleagues, I'll bring it back to the board. If you have questions, let's start with those and then we can move into discussion. Member Hannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a number of questions. Appreciate your patience. First of all, I'm trying to understand the urgency of this resolution. We were advised 1 week ago of this meeting, yet the only thing that we had an opportunity to review was a resolution that was drafted by staff. No staff report, nothing that explains the financial impact to EBCE, nothing that explains the impact to our residents who may be in some form or fashion subsidizing NEM. I'm trying to understand why there was no staff report. In his opening comments, my colleague, Councilmember Kalb, mentioned that he had reviewed or had taken a look at a multitude of material. Why wasn't that material shared with us? So we would have had the same opportunity to understand what is it we're supporting and what are those fiscal impacts. Those are my initial comments and questions.
So who would like to take that? Member Kalb? I'll just give an overarching answer before I turn it over to Member Kalb, Member Hannon. This, we, as a board, I believe, have received a lot of comment on the NEM 3.0 process, public comment from people like Audrey Ichinose, who is in attendance today. And we did at our last meeting decide to delegate responsibility to Member Kalb, who in many years in his professional capacity has worked on energy legislation and volunteered to dive into some of the many arguments for different ways to proceed with the current CPUC process. I'll also note that there is an upcoming hearing, which is part of why this is timely. This is, as one of our commenters mentioned, this is the time for us to get our voice heard before the CPUC makes any decisions. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Kalb to elaborate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know, and thank you through the chair, Councilmember Hannan, Director Hannan, for asking the questions. And it probably would have been better to put links to the voluminous amount of materials on the CPUC website, which is obviously is so much there. It's not even close to being able. No one could possibly read all of that. I don't know if anybody be expected to, but nevertheless, we could have done that. First of all, the timing is time sensitive, and that's why we're having a special meeting instead of waiting till our regular meeting later this month. The PUC, this is we actually were kind of even a little late in the game. A lot of jurisdictions, a lot of folks who have submitted their public comment have done so in the past few weeks, if not a few months ago. So I don't think we could wait any longer. I think it'd be best to do that now, so the PUC commissioners see what our thoughts are. We did discuss this issue with some background information, not a lot, but some, when the state legislation came up that was intending to, not exactly the same as the PUC is going to do. We don't know exactly what they're going to do yet, actually, but more or less the same. And so when the legislation came up earlier this year, I forget the bill number, but we had a discussion on it at the board meeting, and if not more than one board meeting. There was a lot of presentation information provided, or some information provided, and ultimately the board decided to take a position against the legislation, and fortunately it died in the first house. So I do have information from Vote Solar and other organizations. I do want to take this opportunity to address one of the public comments, and I forget who made it. I apologize for that. There was someone that talked about the cost to non-solar customers, and maybe I'm meshing more than one public comment into one. So I'll just answer this as some kind of response to somebody's question. There's a whole range of non-solar customers, as we know. Most customers don't have solar on the roof or any kind of battery storage or anything like that. And so the question is, who are the people who have solar? Who are the people who don't have solar? And if this proceeding, or if the effort was focused on making sure lower income customers, lower income ratepayers, lower income property owners who pay utility bills were compensated or made whole, or however you want to frame it, through some kind of fee or a change in the system that they might be considering, then you would see a lot of near unanimity in making sure that happens by a lot of the folks in and outside of the solar industry and those who are advocates for lower income residents. But that's not what the proceeding is apparently about, although there is some agreement among a lot of groups that, not everybody, but a lot of groups, that lower income customers should be helped as much as possible if need be, and should also be incentivized to become a solar customer more than they maybe already are. But the proceeding, including what the IOUs seem to want to do, and there are others besides them as well, seem to suggest that all non-solar customers, which would mean including upper middle class or wealthy non-solar customers who are paying utility bills, also would be effectively kind of given some money back, or money to them, by solar customers, whoever the solar customers happen to be. That's where there's a lot of disagreement. While the resolution we have before us doesn't get into too many details about what the exact answer should be, it does set a tone as to what should be prioritized and what should be considered in terms of making sure we take into account solar jobs, clean energy jobs, into making sure that lower income customers, whether they're solar or non-solar, are focused on and taken and help to the extent they can be helped as much as possible, and are not costs burden are not put onto them, and to find some kind of compromise. And we're concerned, many people are concerned that the PUC could be heading in a decision that doesn't create a compromise, that is much more towards those parties and those interests that are looking for high fees and low resale value. And so that's why we're trying to weigh in on that, as many others have, and to say, hey, hold on, don't go half-cocked here and harm the solar industry in some manner that some people want. So that, yeah, I think I've answered the question. I've tried to answer the question. I apologize if I haven't been thorough.
Dan, this is Nick. Let me just add maybe one additional point to Member Hannon in response to your question, and I'll just note the resolution itself does not specifically call for kind of specific design parameters for net energy metering. I think some CCAs and local governments have approved resolutions that are very prescriptive, and so because of that, because it's generally a resolution that just states a broad support for a sustainable solar market. Kind of a quantitative analysis of sort of the costs and benefits is challenging, because we don't have a specific proposal in mind as well. I think the only sort of affirmative statement in the resolution is that large fixed fees should not be applied to clean energy technologies on a standalone basis, and that's again more of a philosophical question than an economic question, frankly, from my perspective, because I think the argument around fixed fees is really an argument of, well, if you believe that there are large fixed costs that should be recovered, all customers should then have a fixed fee. And there's a very ripe discussion about whether rates should be designed with large fixed fees or more variable fees, or a mix of fixed and variable, because there are fixed costs and variable costs. And I think that's a great discussion. It's one that we would very much like to have. But that's not on the table here. And frankly, what I think one of the challenges I've observed in this proceeding, and this is just commentary, frankly, it's on the one hand, you have advocacy groups that have long opposed fixed fees in rates, in the name that fixed fees diminish the incentive for consumers to, say, invest in energy efficiency. But now those same parties are arguing for fixed fees to be applied to a specific technology. And I think, if you believe fixed fees are the way to equitably recover your costs, then we should talk about applying fixed fees to all customers, because all customers create a fixed cost component and a variable cost component.
Okay, thank you. Member Hannon, I understand you might have more questions, but I'd like to allow Director Harrison to speak. And I'll remind folks that Director Harrison was a leading force on passing a resolution in Berkeley. So I'm sure she has delved into much the same materials that Director Kalb has.
Thank you very much. I think, well, I had a couple of questions. One, I'm glad to hear what Nick just said about we're not weighing in on the specifics. Because as I understand it, maybe Councilmember Kalb, you can correct me on this. There's two pieces of benefit to people that have solar. One is the selling back to the grid, and the other at a certain rate of excess energy. And the other is this, I'm not going to call it a benefit. Right now, people are charged $10 a month as a fixed fee. And this would be about, as I understand it, $70 to $90 a month for each solar customer, is that right, in the fixed fee? So can you address, first of all, that there are two concepts here that we're talking about?
I'm happy to, well, yes, on the first thing you said, one of the big benefits for many solar customers is the ability from time to time to essentially sell back or get credit for selling back their excess solar generation back onto the grid, which helps make the grid that much cleaner or a little bit cleaner. So yes, that's clearly something that we want people to have that incentive to do, and especially those types of customers who are not doing it as much, but we want them to, and lower income customers need that incentive even more so than today. And that's something that a lot of people are advocating for, including all of us. The second part, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'm not sure the exact, Nick, is there any fixed fee right now for solar customers that Kate's referring to? You're saying that they're paying a $10 charge right now per month for
transmission and distribution.
Right.
Yeah, I pay that myself, so I know that.
And yes, I think you're right about the IOUs and other parties into the proceeding are asking for quite a large fixed fee that would go to all solar customers. And as Nick was pointing out, it would only go to solar customers, even though there are all sorts of costs related to the grid that could also be attributable to non-solar customers. And so this is not a fee for all customers of one sort or another. This is just a fee, could be a substantial fee for just solar customers, which reduces the incentive for more people to become a solar customer.
Yeah, and I think that's where the issue is for me also, is that we talk about individual property owners, but I've done this mapping in Berkeley, and we have at least 45 churches, schools, nonprofit housing developers, governmental institutions that have solar. So this isn't just such a simple rich poor kind of question. I think it's a question of how do we allocate properly the amount of fixed costs embedded in the transmission and distribution system. Because after all, I'm still using their wires. I'm still using their system. So I should pay something. But I think a 7-fold increase is a bit extreme. And the other thing I'm wondering is, do you know, Dan, in all of your reading, whether the utilities or anyone else has addressed the amount of funding they have saved through not having to build more transmission and distribution? In other words, we heard this number of how many costs are being spread to other people from solar customers, but aren't there also savings because the utility did not need to build so much transmission and distribution? And they didn't need to build new plants either because of solar.
Yeah, I could start into that. I think Howard or Nick might have more to say, but clearly over time, there would be less of a need to invest more in transmission or the transmission grid to the extent that you might otherwise have to were there not solar customers. How much that exactly is, near past, present, and near in the future, I couldn't tell you, but clearly that there is a benefit to having solar customers. I don't know how to quantify that right now, but I'm sure somebody does.
Okay, those are my questions, and I have other comments later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're still answering questions, folks. Director Hannon, I'll return to you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have no more questions. I have comments, so I'll hold my comments until others have had a chance.
Very good, thank you. Anna Olivia Eldred, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure it's an administrative issue, but I did not receive an invitation to this meeting, so I'm just hoping staff can update the board list to include me on it, as I am a member of this board. And I am just really hoping that folks remember the recommendation of the Community Advisory Committee, which is to not only take a strong position in defense of a strong net energy metering policy, but take action, like be proactive in supporting this on the state level. So I was not here for the early part of the meeting, but would love to hear what is being proposed. And there are substantial benefits to having solar customers in our community. Many of them are financial. as much as we can lower demand at certain times, it helps the cost across the board. If solar is coupled with storage, there are additional cost benefits that happen for all customers. It decreases line congestion. It can do all sorts of things that result in blackouts. You know, it helps us as a whole and is the end result of substantial investment, legislative investment on the statewide level, including the Million Solar Roofs program. I don't remember what the bill number is, but there's like a lot of verified benefits to having distributed resources and customer-owned generation. And as a CCA, we are an aggregate of our customers. And as 1 in 10 of our customers have solar in some form, this is something that should be supported, especially with the growing number of churches and nonprofits and things like that. And the solar on low income, like multi-unit affordable housing, like recognizing the impacts that these kinds of fees would have on those customers in particular, we should be being very proactive.
Thank you, Anna Olivia. If you haven't seen it, Member Kalb has provided a link to the resolution in the chat. And apologies for not being invited. You're probably aware we are down a clerk at the moment, and everyone's working together to do their best, but we'll make sure that you're on all of the lists for meetings, including special meetings. Colleagues, are there any other clarifying questions before we get into discussion? Member Simon?
Yes, thank you. I'm filling in today as an alternate for Karina Lopez. I'm a council member in the city of San Leandro. Thank you for having me today. I have a clarifying question on the resolution. I mean, overall, this sounds good. I just have a clarifying question. Where it discussed in one of the whereas is that the NEM allows customers to receive a credit, receive bill credits for power generated by the solar system. My understanding, just my own personal shopping around for solar systems, is that the credit you receive is very small.
You were muted, Member Simon.
Excuse me. Was I muted the entire time or just the last part?
No, we heard that you've been shopping for solar and you understood the credit was small, and then.
Yes, sorry. I was shopping for solar and understand the credit is very small that you receive back if you produce power and you send it back to the grid, as opposed to the charge that you would receive if you were to buy the power. So I'm curious if this addresses, or somehow we can address, if there is the customer or the solar panel owner, especially if they're a lower income person, is not being fairly compensated for sending back to the grid.
Does anyone on staff have an awareness of what the rates are that are being returned to solar producers?
It's very dependent on your consumption. So, it depends how much you consume. I think the point that our board member is making there is in reference to excess at the end of the year. So I believe our net excess policy currently is, and jump in, if someone's on the phone, but it's in sort of a, 3 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour. But that's, again, that is to the degree that you generate more energy over the course of a year than you consume. If it is, when it matches your consumption, it is credited at full retail rate.
Okay, thank you. So, Member Simon,
so the average residential customer may, I believe, like the vast majority of our residential customers, they actually consume more than they produce. So most of our customers actually end up paying, $50, $75, up to $50, $75 a month to PG&E. Now they would have potentially been paying $100 or $150 a month, but most consumers don't produce more over the course of a year than they consume.
Also, Madam Chair, the part of the proceeding is to look at the rates that solar customers can get back if they have excess power that they're putting back onto the grid. And the trend seems to be that the solar customers possibly and hopefully, with the exception of lower income solar customers, would over time get less than they're getting now. Still something, but less. And so it's like they're being pushed on both ends. Like, we're going to give you less of an incentive in terms of how much you can get back. And we're also going to have a much larger fee. At least that's what some parties want to impose. And so we're trying to say, whoa, don't go too far here. Yeah, there's going to be some reforms and some adjustments, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's still make sure we're encouraging the solar industry and encouraging more customers to want to become solar customers.
Thank you. And Member Simon, as you're an alternate, I'll just note that from the perspective of this board, the CPUC has had a trajectory of making decisions that we have found to be beneficial to the IOUs rather than to CCAs. So I think it's aligned with our policy decisions in the past, especially with do not support position on AB 1139, I believe is the bill that we were talking about earlier, which would have legislatively done a lot of the recommendations that we're seeing from the IOU side in the NEM 3.0 proceedings. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. For folks I understand Member Hannon, you have some comments, and I just want to note the time for everyone. It's 1:54, and people might have other obligations at 2, so I would just want to be mindful of the time. So I'll bring it back to Member Hannon for comments.
First of all, I want to make it real clear that I accept and appreciate the principles of the resolution. I think anything we can do as a community to incentivize and assist low-income residents in being able to afford solar power to their home is certainly laudable, and we certainly should support it. The issues I have is that the resolution itself is there's just not enough information for me to understand what are the real benefits to our community, especially those in the low-income neighborhoods, and what's the anticipated cost to my other residents who may be asked to subsidize in some form or fashion. As I look at the resolution, we expand clean distribution generation access to all households, particularly of low and moderate income taxpayers. I don't know who those folks are. There's no staff report to say that if you are at this income level, you're likely to benefit as a result of this resolution. We go on to say that it excludes provisions for high monthly fixed fees. I don't know what those fixed fees are currently. I don't know what they would be reduced to if we adopt this resolution. We go on to say that we want to ensure that customers in environmental and social justice communities who have not had much access to Rooftop, et cetera, I don't know who those communities are. Is it based on census tract data? Do we have a map that shows who those folks are, which communities those are? Again, there's just too many issues here that are unknown to me in terms of the benefit and the cost for me to support this resolution. So for those reasons, I will not be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hannon. Member Eldred.
Thank you. Now that I've had a chance to read it, I would say that this resolution is entirely consistent with the discussion and recommendations of the CAC, and we would urge support of this resolution. And just to address a couple of your concerns really quickly, Director Hannon, for example, the number of jobs in solar alone, let alone distributed energy resources in our community, is higher than that of investor-owned utilities. The number of jobs that are accessible to low and moderate income folks in the state of California is also higher. What we have now is a shift in technologies and a shift in adoption rates that have penetrated to such substantial levels across the state of California that more and more of our low income and moderate income residents are not only able to benefit from the direct services of having distributed energy resources, but also the employment that comes with them and the tax base that brings into our communities. In addition, you have these programs like Healthy Homes, SOMA, that kind of programming, like 10% of the cap and trade funds in California are going directly to funding that SOMA program. So you have this concerted effort right now to actively bring into low and moderate income communities direct benefits of having solar, having these other things that go along with solar when we actually implement them. So weatherization, inspections for mold and other health impacts, those kinds of things, coupled with the employment benefits. So there are numerous, and I would be happy to provide you with some of that documentation. But just so you know, there are really direct benefits, and cutting out a program that was expanded with the California Solar Initiative because we could not achieve our climate goals without a strong net energy metering program. Gutting that at this time would be disastrous for these programs. So that's, in honor of time, we would urge support of this resolution.
Thank you. Member Harrison.
Now, I wanted to ask the author if you would accept a couple of amendments. One is, can we have a whereas clause that asks the PUC to consider the deferred costs or avoided costs from building additional power plants and transmission and distribution resources? I don't know what that number is, but I'd like to have them make sure they include that when they're thinking about this issue. And the other thing I would like to just point out is that all new buildings in California are required to have solar. So on the one hand, we're saying legislatively, you have to have solar. And on the other hand, we're going to be charging you potentially more than you ever paid before. So I have to use a personal example again, sorry. I used to pay about $35 a month on electricity. I now pay 10 because I have solar, which I paid for. This proceeding, and I have done the math for myself, would cost me $80 a month. I'd be paying more than twice what I used to pay for electricity. So it's a complete disincentive for anyone, and not just me who can afford it, but for anyone else, like, as I mentioned, the nonprofit developers. So I'm just concerned that we make sure we add that we'd like the PUC to consider the impact of all the avoided costs from the pursuit of rooftop solar. B, consider how this cost would, if there were an increase in fixed charge, compare to the average cost before people got solar, so that they do that analysis. And C, I just want to bring up one final thing, and that is the fact that, just like with housing, I don't want to build solar farms in the desert. I don't want to ruin nature. We have roofs everywhere. Roofs are an existing resource. They are here amongst us. We can build more housing and we can build more solar in our cities. And I think we don't want to push all that out to the Netherlands, you know, of the state, and say, well, those rural communities are going to suffer from having all this development of these big solar farms. So I'd also like us to add a whereas clause that asks the PUC to consider the impact of solar farms on local communities and their cost versus the cost of rooftop solar. Because I don't think they're doing that here. I think they're assuming no solar or rooftop solar, but really what they're going for is solar farms that they make profit from. And we know that. So those are my requests. If we can do anything in that direction, I'd really appreciate it. I really want better analysis from them, is what I'm saying. I feel like there's pieces they've left out. I should say the utilities have left out that we'd like the PUC to consider.
Thank you. Member Hannon?
Yes, I'll make this real quick, Madam Chair, because I'm sensitive to time. Ms. Eldred, I absolutely appreciated your comments. And I'm very sensitive, as I've indicated, to low-income residents in my community. And anything we can do to benefit low-income residents and being able to access solar energy, I absolutely support. My concern is that there just simply was not enough information in here in terms of the cost and the benefits for me to make that decision today. But I welcome any literature or information you want to send to me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member Monroe.
I very much appreciate the work that's been done on the to bring this resolution forward. I think given that it is somewhere between direction and philosophy, it says what it needs to say. I did want to speak to the solar farm issue since golly, there seems to be something going on out in Livermore that's currently under litigation there. In investigating that, one of the things that's clear is that it's not an either or. So I would like to just sort of not have that particular piece brought forward, and to also recognize that when we do have a conversation about solar farms, we recognize that all solar farms are not equal. There are agrivoltaics, and there's all kinds of ways to make it go forward. So, but let's put that on hold. I just wanted to make sure that correction or that clarification was made. So.
Thank you, Member Narum.
Thank you. You may have talked about this. We lost internet here for a few minutes. I certainly appreciate the efforts of this. I certainly think that the solar is important, both low income, just across the board. You know, I heard a number of speakers and comments use the word sustainability. And for me, I think that's the one piece in here that maybe that word is missing, that we really want a solar program here to be sustainable economically and to expand it. And maybe I missed it, but that just seems like a really important word here. And if that could somehow be incorporated or folded into it, I certainly would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Member Harrison, your hand is still up. Did you have further comments?
I was going to ask if I could screen share the one phrase I'd like to insert into the resolution as a friendly amendment.
That is a great idea. I don't know if you have the ability to do that. Go ahead and click share screen and see if it works.
I do. Now I have to go find it. Sorry. You go to someone else and I'll be right back with you. I made a technical mistake. I will find it.
Folks, is there someone who, Member Patino, save the day. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to help Member Harrison here. No, I did read the resolution. I would be okay with Member Harrison's friendly amendment to it or addition to it. I think we need to do something as a member. I like the resolution. I'd like to commend Member Kalb for his putting this together. And as a solar owner myself at my own home, I think this is we're going in the right direction. Can we fine tune it later? Yes, we probably can, but I think this is a great start.
Great, thank you. Member Harrison, have you got it? Oh, you're still muted.
I failed to screen share, but I put it in the chat.
In the chat.
Whereas the CPUC should consider the avoided transmission, distribution, and generation costs in its analysis of the cost and benefits of rooftop solar.
Okay, very good. So that is a proposed added whereas. Member Monroe?
I would like to make a motion because I'm about to lose my computer's about out of juice. Speaking of,
there's a motion. So there is a request.
I would like. Is it possible to make the motion including the whereas?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I would like to so move so that I can actually vote on this before my computer dies.
Very good. Is there a second? I have a motion by Member Monroe, a second by Member Patino. The motion is to accept the resolution with the addition of the whereas the CPUC should consider the avoided transmission, distribution, and generation costs in its analysis of the cost and benefits of rooftop solar. All right. Madam Clerk, Vanessa, are you ready to take the roll?
I am. I don't believe anyone else, any other board members have attended, but I will just go quickly in alphabetical order. Alameda County. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley.
Yes.
Dublin. Emeryville.
Yes.
Fremont. Hayward. Livermore.
Yes.
Just in time. Newark.
No.
Oakland.
Aye.
Piedmont. Pleasanton,
Yes.
San Leandro,
Yes.
Tracy, and Union City.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Colleagues, I want to thank you for a very productive discussion. Member Hannon, although we might not see eye to eye on passing this resolution, I always appreciate your input, and I appreciate the way this board operates. We can have differences of opinion and not have ad hominem attacks or even no raised voices, not even once. I'm so grateful for all of my colleagues, and I think this was a great meeting. If you wish to dive into the NEM 3.0 CPUC proceedings, Mike, I'm sure we can send you that link. There's plenty to read. But I am always happy to have the expertise of Director Kalb, and of course, Member Harrison, and of course, Anna Olivia Eldred, and all of my other colleagues who have read deeply on this subject. And I trust as well as the information that staff provided on AB 1139 back when we were considering that. So thank you, colleagues. I will let you get back to your busy days. The time is 2:08 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.